Welcome to the Surgical Edge podcast for surgical insights, reviews, discussions, and to stay updated. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a topic that affects millions globally, colorectal cancer.
It certainly does.
Our mission, as always, is to cut through the noise and pull out the most crucial insights from, well, quite a stack of sources we have here.
Yeah, there's a lot to get through.
To give you a fresh perspective, a really solid understanding of this complex health challenge, we'll be uncovering some pretty significant, maybe even unexpected aspects.
Exactly. And the information around colorectal cancer is just vast, isn't it? From the tiny cellular origins right up to its huge impact on public health.
Right.
So in this deep dive, we're not just defining it, we're aiming to really get why it's such a persistent challenge for medicine and, well, for you listening.
Okay, so let's dig into the sheer scale of this challenge straight away. I mean, the sources really hammer home that colorectal cancer is a major healthcare issue right across the board.
Prevention, diagnosis, treatment.
Yeah, survivorship, all of it. Here in the UK, for instance, it's tragically the second most common cause of cancer death. We're talking over 16,000 lives lost every year.
16,000? That's staggering.
It is. And the number of new diagnoses, over 42,000 new cases identified annually. That's just a huge burden.
It really is. And what's fascinating, or perhaps concerning, is how the landscape is changing.
How so?
Well, while most cases still happen in older people, we're seeing this increase worldwide in younger patients.
Really? That seems counterintuitive.
It does, and it's a major focus for research right now, trying to figure out why. We also see gender differences. Overall numbers are higher in men, especially for rectal cancers.
Okay.
But, colon cancer incidence, actually higher in women.
Huh. Interesting. And survival rates?
So the overall 5-year survival is around 58%. But, and this is the crucial bit, early diagnosis makes a world of difference.
Right.
If it's caught early, before it spreads, that 5-year survival jumps to over 90%.
Wow, 90%.
Compare that to just 10% for those diagnosed when the cancer's already metastasized, spread, to other parts of the body.
10%. That's stark.
It really underscores why early detection is so vital. You see initiatives like the new NICE guidance in the UK, that's the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
They're really emphasizing patient information, shared decision-making, which reflects this broader shift towards empowering patients, thinking about quality of life.
Makes sense.
And there's also the National Bowel Cancer Audit Project in England and Wales, constantly tracking outcomes to improve quality.
Okay, so that paints a picture of the impact. But, to really fight this, we need to understand its nature. Let's start with something the sources stress. The difference between colon and rectal cancer. Why is that so critical?
It's absolutely vital because even though they're neighbors, anatomically speaking, the treatment plans can be completely different.
So it's not just bowel cancer. Location really matters.
Precisely. And, historically, defining the rectum itself has been a bit tricky.
How come?
Well, different schools of thought, surgical traditions, even old anatomy texts, they had different ideas about where the colon stops and the rectum starts.
Like what?
So, for example, the UK generally says a tumor within 15 centimeters of the anal verge is rectal.
Okay, 15 centimeters.
But in the US, they often prefer 11 or 12 centimeters. And other definitions look at bony landmarks or where certain tissues attach.
So a few centimeters difference, but it sounds like that makes a big difference treatment-wise.
A huge difference. It dictates the surgical approach, whether radiation is needed. So getting that definition right and universally understood is key.
Right.
And now, with better imaging, there's a move towards using a radiological definition, the sigmoid takeoff point. Basically, where the fixed part of the rectal support tissue ends, it might be more reproducible.
Ah, okay. Standardization helps everyone. So let's talk origins. Most colorectal cancers start from polyps, right? Those little growths.
That's the general pathway, yes. The adenoma-carcinoma sequence.
And where do they usually pop up?
About half are in the rectum and the left side of the colon, maybe 25% on the right side.
Okay.
And in about 5% of cases, people can have more than one cancer or precancerous lesion at the same time. Synchronous lesions, they're called.
Gotcha. And these precancerous polyps, are they all the same?
No, there are different types. The most common are adenomas, usually polypoid, sort of mushroom-shaped.
Right.
But you also get flat adenomas, which are harder to spot, and they might account for, up to 40%.
40%, wow.
Yeah. Then there are serrated lesions. They look different under the microscope, related to hyperplastic polyps, they're now definitely seen as premalignant.
And where are they found?
Characteristically on the right side. They can be easily missed and might be involved in a sort of accelerated cancer pathway.
Which could explain some of those interval cancers, the ones that appear between screenings.
Exactly. That's one hypothesis.
So the evidence linking polyps to cancer seems really solid. What's the strongest proof, would you say?
Good question. There's lots of converging evidence, like finding adenoma tissue next to cancers, the fact that adenomas often show genetic changes seen in cancers.
Okay.
But probably the most compelling evidence comes from screening studies.
How so?
Long-term programs using colonoscopy to find and remove polyps. They demonstrably reduce the number of people who actually develop colorectal cancer.
Ah, so removing the polyp stops the cancer before it starts.
Precisely. It's direct proof that intercepting the polyp presents the cancer. It really validates the whole screening approach.
That makes total sense. Okay, so we know how it starts. But once it has progressed to cancer, how does it spread? That's where things get really serious, I imagine.
Absolutely. Once the cancer cells invade, they can spread in four main ways.
Huh?
First is direct spread.
Just growing outwards.
Yeah, growing into nearby tissues, sideways, along the bowel wall, through the wall, and radially outwards. That radial spread is really key for surgeons.
Why is that?
Because it determines how much tissue around the tumor they need to take out to get clear margins. So, depending on where it is, it might grow into, say, the ureter, or the small intestine, or into the pelvic wall if it's rectal cancer.
Okay, direct invasion. What's next?
Lymphatic spread through the lymph system. Usually starts in the nodes, right next to the paracolic nodes.
Right.
Then it travels along the main blood vessels towards nodes deeper in the abdomen near the aorta in late stages.
Does it always follow that neat path?
Usually, but not always.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, in maybe 30% of cases, it can skip a level of lymph nodes, jump over the first group, as it were.
Huh. Okay, that complicates things.
It can. And there's a slight difference between colon and rectal cancer here, too. Colon cancer usually doesn't spread to lymph nodes unless it's gone through the muscle wall.
Right.
Rectal cancer drains mainly via nodes in the fatty tissue around the rectum, the mesorectum.
Okay, lymph nodes. What's the third route?
Bloodborne spread. This is how metastases often travel to distant organs.
And the main target is?
The liver. Probably because the blood from the colon drains straight to the liver via the portal vein.
How common is liver spread?
Very. Up to 37% might have tiny hidden liver metastases at the time of their initial surgery.
Hidden. Wow.
Yeah, occult metastases. And overall, about half of patients will eventually develop obvious liver spread. Lungs are the next most common site, maybe 10%.
And elsewhere?
Less commonly. But it can spread to ovaries, adrenals, bone, brain, kidneys.
Okay. And the last route?
Transcoelomic spread. This is spread across the lining of the abdomen, the peritoneum.
How does that happen?
Either through tiny lymph channels just under the surface, or sometimes cancer cells can actually shed off the tumor surface into the abdominal fluid.
And that can cause?
Malignant ascites fluid buildup in the abdomen containing cancer cells.
Mm-hmm.
It's relatively rare, though.
So a lot of ways it can spread, which brings us back to the why. Why does colorectal cancer develop in the first place? It sounds complex.
It is hugely complex. For most people, it seems environmental factors are the main drivers.
Not genetics.
Well, only about 5% of cases are down to those high-risk inherited gene mutations we hear about. But lower-risk genetic variations probably play a role in many more cases interacting with those environmental factors.
Okay. And what are the big factors?
Well, our understanding of the molecular genetics has exploded. We know there are multiple pathways involved, lots of built-in redundancies that cancer cells figure out how to bypass.
Right.
And a really hot area right now is the gut microbiome.
The bacteria in our gut.
Exactly. It might act as a kind of mediator for environmental factors. We see differences in the gut bacteria of people with colorectal cancer.
Cause or effect, though?
That's the million-dollar question. We don't know for sure yet.
Yeah.
But certain bacteria seem linked to progression or treatment response. It opens up possibilities for, future prevention or diagnosis, maybe even tailoring treatment based on someone's microbiome.
Fascinating. What about the known genetic links?
The two big inherited syndromes are Lynch syndrome. That's a problem with DNA mismatch repair genes. And familial adenomatous polyposis, FAP, caused by APC gene mutations, leading to hundreds or thousands of polyps.
Right, I've heard of FAP.
But even if you don't have those specific syndromes, just having a family history increases your risk. That's likely a mix of shared environment and maybe some less powerful inherited gene variations.
And what about the majority of cases, the sporadic ones without a clear inherited cause?
Well, interestingly, they often show molecular changes that mirror those inherited pathways. We classify them into consensus molecular subtypes, or CMS.
Why does that classification matter?
It has real clinical relevance now. For instance, one subtype, CMS1, shows microsatellite instability, or MSI. About 14% of sporadic cases are like this.
Okay.
And these MSI tumors often respond differently to standard chemotherapy, but better to immunotherapy. So testing for MSI and other mutations like KRAS or BIF is now pretty much essential to guide treatment choices. It's personalized medicine in action.
Right, tailoring the treatment to the specific tumor biology. That's a big step. Okay, let's switch gears slightly to things people might have more direct control over: diet and lifestyle.
Yeah, the World Cancer Research Fund reviews this regularly. The evidence is pretty clear on some things.
Like what reduces risk?
Physical activity definitely reduces risk. Things like dietary fiber, whole grains, dairy, calcium, they probably help too.
And what increases risk?
Strong evidence for processed meat intake, obesity, being taller as an adult, which is probably a marker for growth factors, and alcohol consumption.
What about red meat?
Probable association with increased risk there too. And, the risk from diabetes seems closely linked with obesity. So obesity and lack of physical activity are really key targets for prevention.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Smoking. Long-term smoking is linked, especially with that MSI subtype, CMS1. But the good news is quitting reduces the risk.
Good to know. Are there any other medical conditions that predispose someone?
Yes. Long-standing inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, or Crohn's disease significantly increases risk.
Okay.
There's also a, controversial link with previous stomach surgery, like having part of the stomach removed. Maybe a twofold risk, possibly due to changes in bile acids.
Interesting.
And one definite, though rare now, link is with an old operation called ureterosigmoidostomy, where the ureters were plumbed into the sigmoid colon. That carried a high risk.
Right. Okay, so lots of factors involved. Now, how do people typically present? You mentioned earlier that despite pathways, many cases are emergencies.
Yeah, it's striking. Around 20% still present as an emergency, often with a bowel obstruction or significant rectal bleeding.
Why is that if we have referral routes for symptoms?
It's tricky. Some people might be asymptomatic for a long time. Others might ignore symptoms, or the symptoms might be quite vague, not classic red flags.
So the referral pathways aren't perfect.
Well, in the UK, they introduced urgent referral pathways back in 2000 for high-risk symptoms based on age and what people reported.
Did it help?
It initially reduced emergency presentations a bit. But paradoxically, these pathways, plus awareness campaigns, led to a huge increase in investigations, but without actually improving the stage at diagnosis. People were getting checked, but the cancers weren't being found any earlier overall.
More tests, same outcome.
Exactly. Then in 2015, they broadened the criteria even more, lowering the symptom threshold. This just swamped diagnostic services, like colonoscopy, again without clear benefit in earlier diagnosis. But it did bring back testing for hidden blood in stool.
Which leads us to a newer tool that sounds quite promising.
Yes, exactly. How do we make this smarter? That brings us to fecal immunochemical testing, FIT.
FIT testing, what's that?
It's a test specifically for human hemoglobin blood in stool samples. It's used now in symptomatic patients, not just for screening.
And how does it help?
It's basically a very good risk stratification tool. It helps sort the huge number of people with bowel symptoms into a very low-risk group and a higher-risk group needing urgent investigation.
Based on the amount of blood?
Essentially, yes. The NICE-FIT study, a big UK study, nearly 10,000 patients with high-risk symptoms, showed that if your FE test was negative, meaning undetectable blood, your risk of having colorectal cancer was incredibly low, like 0.2%. Even using a slightly higher cutoff, the risk was still only about 0.4%.
That's really low.
It is. So, for example, they looked at people referred just for rectal bleeding. Over half had a negative IFI test, and their cancer risk was still tiny.
So FIT can potentially reassure a lot of people and focus colonoscopies on those who really need them.
That's exactly the potential. Could make the whole diagnostic pathway much more efficient and targeted.
Wow, what a deep dive this has been. I mean, from the sheer scale of the problem and those subtle but vital definitions.
Colon versus rectum, yeah.
To the polyp to cancer story, how it spreads, the complex mix of genes, environment, microbiome.
Diet, lifestyle.
And now these evolving diagnostic tools like FIT, it really shows how much is going on in this field.
It absolutely does. And maybe a final thought for you listening. Consider how all these pieces fit together. The subtle differences in definition, the tangle of genetics and lifestyle, the emerging role of gut bacteria. It just shows that even for a disease we think we know well, there are so many layers.
Always more to learn.
Always. It requires constant vigilance, ongoing research, and adapting how we approach it in healthcare. This deep dive really has just scratched the surface of how interconnected everything is in the fight against colorectal cancer.
A field definitely demanding our attention.
For sure. It's all about pushing for those better patient outcomes.
Thank you for listening to the Surgical Edge podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Help us grow and deliver even more relevant surgical content by pressing the support button. Your contribution truly makes a difference. And don't forget to share with us your advice, feedback, and the topics you would like us to include.